Good to go. Unmuted.
Thanks for joining the session. Unmuted again. All right. Yeah, thanks for joining my session. Unlock the power of PowerShell across your organization. I hope you had some good lunch. Hopefully not too heavy, so you can kind of not fall asleep during what I want to present in this session. So my name is Heiko. I'm from Scriptrunner. And yeah, I will have a few slides, and then I want to show you the solution in work at work and how you can bring PowerShell on a level that maybe everybody in your organization can really benefit from it. So I will start sharing my screen. And if you have any questions, use the chat window. I will try to keep an eye on it during the session. So I will try to answer that. And I think we will also have time for a question answer at the end of my session. Okay, before we start, thanks to the sponsors of the CloudEight Summit, number 3 as it is, IT Point, 365, Microsoft Blog, and well, yeah, we are sponsoring this event as well the second time. So this is the agenda. I want to talk a little bit about the general potential of PowerShell, then the challenges that you might face when you're using PowerShell, and then, of course, we're going to take a look at how to unlock the possibilities of PowerShell and make the most out of this great technology. Okay, so I'm with a company called Scriptrunner. We are based in Germany, and we are into PowerShell management. So the goal for us is to simplify the way you develop, manage, and delegate PowerShell. And so here you see part of our team. That is me. So you can get in touch with me on Twitter, on LinkedIn, via GitHub, email, just if you have any topics to talk about, let me know. And we are very much into supporting the community, supporting all people, starting with PowerShell. So depending on where you are on your PowerShell journey, you might be interested in our PowerShell cheat sheet poster that you can put on your wall, your home office wall, maybe at the moment. And it helps you to, in your day-to-day business when you're working with PowerShell, how the AD module works, how the pipeline works, WMI and stuff like that. And I'm also going to post the link to that page where you can actually get the poster into the chat right away. So if you're interested in that, just go to this site. We sent this poster to you, and it's like the get help for your office wall, so to speak. All right. So with this, let's start talk about the potential of PowerShell. I mean, PowerShell has been around for quite some time, since 2006, and it's really it's a mature command line shell, but of course it's also a great scripting language to automate all kinds of things in your infrastructure. So it's something that you can really use to automate recurring tasks in a consistent way. I think this is one of the most important things. So the things that you want to do always happens the same way: spinning up a new VM, creating new users, creating reports, or whatever the use case might be. And really to simplify the administration of your whole infrastructure, which is, of course, we're talking about the Microsoft infrastructure, but now as PowerShell is open source, it's also about managing Linux machines. And of course, we have, besides Microsoft, many other vendors that are supporting PowerShell, that have their own PowerShell modules, like VMware, like Citrix, like AWS, and stuff like that. So that's really a great thing to use. And of course, having this worldwide community, which is very, very active, and you find all kinds of help and support and modules for PowerShell as well. So if you're looking at the PowerShell ecosystem, it's really, on one hand, of course, it's all the stuff that you can do with the modules and on the platforms for Microsoft, but it's also something that you can use for many other platforms. And on top of that, you have all these great community members that come up with their own modules for platforms or for specific use cases. So that's really what makes PowerShell really that great and that big, actually. And coming back to this cross-platform PowerShell topic, really means that now with PowerShell 7, it's not just Windows that you can manage with PowerShell, but it's really also Linux and macOS. But Linux really here, I think, is the main topic. So it's really worth looking and start using PowerShell if you not already have started using it. It has a lot of potential for really simplifying and automating your recurring tasks, and so that's really something that I want to encourage you if you're not already using some kind of PowerShell. But yeah, depending on where you are on your PowerShell journey, there might be some challenges when you look at how to use PowerShell. And here I have divided into 3 areas, which is like, okay, when you start using PowerShell, it's like, okay, actually, where do I start? So let's find the use case that happens maybe 10 times a day, and you do it manually at the moment. So look at this and try to make it something that you can automate on the command line, or maybe even create a script. Then, of course, finding resources where, again, the community is a great way of getting started with PowerShell, because here you find a lot of helpful people that are really happy to support you with everything that you might want to know about how to use PowerShell. Then if you're more advanced and you have your own scripts, you might run into questions like, okay, how can I organize my scripts? How can I make sure that I'm using the right scripts, the latest scripts? Hopefully they have been tested somehow, and really how starting to standardize and to have a kind of a process and the best practice approach, how you write your scripts and stuff like that. And if you're then even more in the third level, maybe where you have many scripts already that you use yourself, and then you might come to the point where you think, maybe it would be great if somebody else could also start using my scripts and my modules. And how can I manage that in a secure way? Talking about credentials and the connectivities to your backend systems. And so how to help others to really consume these scripts. And this is where I want to focus on in this session, when it comes to how to organize all that scripts that you might have already in your arsenal, or you're thinking about creating, and make this something that is not just something that you can use, but maybe others as well. So what this picture tries to represent is like, okay, you might have all your scripts somewhere, and because you wrote them, you will know exactly which one to use when you want to start an onboarding process, or create a new SQL database, or a new team, or a new Azure VM, or whatever. But it might be somehow decentralized, maybe even unorganized, or however you want to call it. Like, okay, I have the scripts, and they're maybe on a network share, or they're in somewhere in a folder. And yes, I know where they are, but if somebody else should be able to use it, that might become difficult to share the scripts also in a secure way. And what we also see in this respect is that the PowerShell know-how in the organizations that we see, no matter if it's a big one, small one, medium size, whatever. In all these cases, typically, maybe you have a handful of people that know PowerShell quite a bit, maybe even just 1 or 2. And so outside of this group of people who are really into PowerShell, you have some kind of know-how bottleneck, right? Where okay, somebody in help desk might not be familiar with PowerShell, and telling them how to go to the command line and typing in the parameters and stuff like that, they might not feel very comfortable with it. So this is something that also comes with, of course, using PowerShell, you have to know how to use it, right? And then, of course, you have to have the permissions to do things in the backend systems, which brings us to this credential topic, where, okay, of course, if I want to do something in Office 65 or in Azure or in whatever backend system, I need to have the right permissions to run a script or to use a commandlet to whatever I want to do in my AD or Exchange or something like this. And PowerShell itself doesn't come with an org-wide credential management solution. And so as a result, when you're using PowerShell, you have your scripts. It's typically really you or the people who are really into PowerShell who are using it. So even if there's something automated, people still knock at your door physically or virtually and saying, okay, could you please spin up a VM? Could you please change memberships, group memberships or whatever? And from our perspective, this really means that the potential that is there in PowerShell remains untapped. The potential in the sense of it shouldn't be just something that is being used in this small circle of people who are really maybe even very deep into PowerShell and love to use it. But it's really something that we think there are more possibilities to really use PowerShell, and not just for, as I said, maybe in this small little IT expert, PowerShell expert circle. And that brings us to really what does that mean? So what has to happen to make this possible, to really kind of broaden the audience for PowerShell? And from our perspective, so, okay, it's about the whole organization of all the stuff that you need to run scripts successfully. So we talk about standardization, making sure everybody who is using a script is always using the right one, the latest one that everybody should use if you do whatever that script does. And so from our perspective, centralization is the key aspect here, bringing all the things together in a central place, like the scripts, the modules, the credentials, and manage all that in a secure way so that you can really start delegating things to other people and not thinking about, okay, if I delegate something, I have to make this person global admin in Exchange or in my Azure subscription or something like this, because of course that's not what we want, right? Because it's about maybe delegating a few use cases, but not making people a global admin in your backend system. And then, as we're talking about people who are maybe not really familiar with PowerShell, and they don't have to, in our case, it has to be easy. And so the idea here really is to kind of transfer any kind of script into a really user-friendly web user interface. So what you see on the right side is really just a form somewhere in a self-service portal or in whatever website it might be. And so it's about, okay, you have some input forms. We need some information, in this case, to maybe create an out-of-office notification when somebody calls in sick, for example. So it could be someone in HR, for example. We have some input information, the date and stuff like that, and then that's it. So in this case, really, there's no need to know anything about PowerShell. It's really about getting the job done, having this use case, and using PowerShell in the background. That's exactly what Scriptrunner then does, but hiding all that technical stuff, all that complexity, and really broaden the audience. So let's say everybody can use PowerShell without even knowing that in the background it is PowerShell that does the job. And then we of course also monitoring. Interesting, monitoring plays an important role here, which means, because centralization means the scripts are executed centrally, we can see what script ran at what time, how long did it take, was there an error, stuff like that. So you have the overview about all the activities, and that is true for an interactive usage of scripts with like the web form that we just saw in the picture. But it also can be, of course, a scheduled approach for all your housekeeping processes, and it can be an integrated one when we talk about having other systems that you want to enable to talk REST and to start scripts in Scriptrunner. So in this scenario, like Scriptrunner becomes this centralized hub for all PowerShell activities. All right, so the question becomes, okay, how does that actually work? And so it all starts with centralizing the scripts and the modules. So they're all in a central place. And of course, they can be synchronized with GitHub or with TFS or Azure DevOps or something like this. But having this script in a central place already makes it very much simpler to use it. And also the modules are only having it in a central place, which means that, for example, you want to do something with Teams, you need a Teams module, you need the Azure AD module, and if you want to do something with VMware, you need to have the PowerCLI module, for example. And instead of also having this installed all over the place, with Scriptrunner, it's just a thing that you do on a single machine. And talking about the credentials is also, of course, very important, because the question becomes, okay, where do we store these credentials? And there are actually two ways. One is storing them locally on the Windows Credential Store, or, and I'm trying to show you that right here, okay. And the other possibility is to use password servers, which even more centralizes the whole process, because then you have your password walls, and then in real time, Scriptrunner asks for the right credentials to create a PowerShell session to Exchange, Office 365, Azure, whatever backend system. And so that is even more interesting if we think about, okay, maybe having multiple instances of Scriptrunner, so you definitely don't want to maintain all that stuff multiple times on local machines. What's also important to know is that when you use PowerShell together with Scriptrunner, it is really about only Scriptrunner is the instance that executes the scripts. So only Scriptrunner needs to have access to the backend systems over here, on premises, in the cloud, whatever, and also only needs to have access to the credentials. And then on the other side, the user that you want to enable to do things in your backend system, they don't need to have any access to the systems, and so they also don't need to have any permissions, because the delegation is done within Scriptrunner. So in Scriptrunner, you decide if this user is able to do things in Azure, Office 365, SharePoint, VMware, Active Directory, or whatever. But in order to be able to do that, it's really, you really decide what is the use case that you want to delegate, and there's no need to give any permissions in the backend systems directly. And because we're talking about, again, of course, the people who are not really maybe that much into PowerShell, you want to do this in a nice looking way. So what happens here is that the scripts are automatically being transformed from a script into a web user interface by looking into Synopsys, looking into and hopefully finding some parameter descriptions, because that's what you see on top of this parameter. Then we look at the parameters itself, like, okay, is there a date time parameter? So we translate it automatically in a date picker. Or is there a parameter that contains regular expressions to check if the content is correct? That's something that also, of course, is being used. And what you might see here as well is when we talk about creating a new team, in this example, this new team commandlet has dozens of parameters, but we only see 3: the name, the description, and the members. And that's because you can decide and you can manage what is visible to the user, what are the parameters that are predefined in the background and still, of course, being used, like, do you want to allow Giphies? Do you want to allow people to delete channels or to create private channels or whatever? So all these security settings are in the background, and because we're talking about standardization, it's always been used when, in this case, a new team is created. But the user really is seeing the things that really needs the attention and the input of a user, like in this case, these 3 parameters, and that's it. And that's how you can, on one hand, simplify the whole process for the users, and you can, of course, manage what you actually want these people to be able to work with. Like, okay, should they be able to see all my users in Office 365, or maybe only just a subset? This is something that you can control and manage with Scriptrunner without the need of doing this in your scripts. This is another very important aspect. So your scripts stay kind of pretty static, and the different use cases for maybe different teams, because this is a team for Europe, this is the team for the US, for example, these things happen in the configuration and not in the scripts. And then, so step by step, you can add new use cases, and maybe you have user with maybe with 20 use cases or actions, as we call them, or maybe others maybe have just 5 actions or 2 actions, depending on what they should be able to do. And then coming back to this integration perspective, is like, okay, you can start also enable other systems like monitoring systems, ITSM system, workflow systems to trigger scripts also through the Scriptrunner solution. And that means in this case, really Scriptrunner becomes this centralized hub for all your activities around PowerShell. Even maybe if this third-party system has some kind of PowerShell capabilities, but it still might need that mean that you need to bring a script to that particular machine and not having it in the central place, which happens with Scriptrunner. All right, and as we talked about the security stuff and the password server just now, I also want to let you know that if you want to dig deeper into all that PowerShell security stuff, and we know that especially at the moment it is an important topic, you can get our free PowerShell Security ebook. It has 140 something pages, I think. You can download this from our website. I will also copy that into the chat right away. So if you want to get that, it's really helpful to learn more about how to use PowerShell in a secure way. Okay, so with this, I want to show you a little bit some examples. So let's start with let's think about, okay, we want to do something in Teams, and let's start with do something natively with PowerShell, which is already a great thing, right? What you need is, of course, you need to have the Microsoft Teams module. You need to have the right credential so that you can really connect to your Office 365 tenant, and then you can start. Given that you have a credential that has the right permissions to do all that stuff, you can, for example, okay, you can try, for example, to find out, okay, do we have any guest users in our Teams environment with this little two lines here of, I don't even want to call it code, but with this little snippet here. So you can find out, okay, do I have Teams, do I have guest accounts in my Teams, for example? Or maybe I want to know, do we have any, or what are the top 10 members or owners of inside of my Teams environment? So again, I'm just what I'm doing here. I'm using the get team to get all the information. Then I get the get team user to summarize the information, and then to find out, okay, who are the top members or owners in my environment. Or you might want to have an even more sophisticated summary of your Teams infrastructure. We can run this as well here. It will come back with an output view, so with a little UI that you can use once that's done, hopefully. And so these are the things that, of course, are great because you want to, in this case, to get an overview about your infrastructure just with a few lines of code, or you want to add, which is might be another use case. Maybe you want to add, so here is the result. So here, that's my team environment at the moment. So I see all the teams, I see the members, I see the channels, for example. So that might be useful for getting some overview, but maybe you also want to add some specific users or remove a user from or to all teams, or you might want to kind of deploy a channel to all your teams. These are all things that you can do with PowerShell natively, which is again great if you are in the position of, okay, you know how PowerShell works. You have the right permissions, and then that's great. And then you can build your scripts, right? Now, if some of these tasks or other tasks are there and you think about, okay, I would like to somebody in help desk to do that and to maybe to get the report or to change settings or whatever. And then you might think, okay, how can I do that? And that's exactly where then a Scriptrunner comes into the picture. And that's what I want to show you here. So here we are in the Scriptrunner admin user interface. And here's the dashboard where we come back later, because here you see all the activities of things that has happened. And but as I said, it all starts with the scripts, because at the end, what we want to achieve based on the script is that maybe a user should be able to create a database backup, or somebody should be able to create a new VM in Azure, and I want to make sure they are only able to spin them up in my local regions, and they're only able to spin Azure VMs up in the sizes that I want to really allow them to do, to avoid that they spin up the most expensive ones, for example. Or I want to allow somebody in HR to create an out of office for somebody who calls in sick, and then selecting the user, selecting the template for okay, what's the use case right now, and then saying, okay, from when to when this person is out of office because it's we have the sick leave information, for example. Or coming back to this team scenario, okay, somebody should be able to create a new team, and then the thing that we need here is we need a name, we need members, right? And that's it. And then I'm clicking here on OK, and then in the background something should happen. So because the idea here is really make it as easy as possible. Nobody needs to know anything about PowerShell if we think about this scenario here. Now, to make this happen, of course, we need the scripts, right? So here I have my scripts for Azure, for Office 365, for Citrix, for all kinds of backend systems. Most of the scripts are actually coming from, which is another good source for you, maybe from our action packs on GitHub. If you go to github.com/scriptrunner/action packs, you see hundreds of scripts actually for all kinds of use cases, all kinds of platforms that you can download, you can use for yourself, you can modify them as you want. If you are new to PowerShell, it also going to show you what's the best practice approach by Microsoft by having really a synopsis that contains the parameter descriptions, where you here already see that we add some additional functionality, which in this case is multi-language support. So if somebody switches, oh, somebody asked for the link. I guess that was for, I'm not sure what this was. Maybe I can do this later on. Or, it was for the GitHub. Okay. Yeah, so in this case, we are adding already some additional functionality to PowerShell by providing this multi-language support. So if somebody switched from German to English in the interface, the descriptions of this parameter will have the right language, and you can add your own languages as well, and we will add other languages as well. And then, of course, we have the parameters, and then you also see we add some additional information here to control what the user is able to see and other things as well. So these are the scripts, right? And of course, they could be synchronized with any kind of GitHub repo, for example. Step 2 would be we need credentials, and they could be stored locally. In this case, my credentials are for this Exchange account coming from a Pleasant server. And so instead of having the credential right here, it's just the ID. So what Scriptrunner does is we're asking Pleasant server when somebody should be done with Exchange to get the credential for this ID. So if passive rotation is activated, you always have the right information at this point in time. And you can see here we also support SSH, which means, okay, we can of course also use PowerShell 7. We're also going to support the PowerShell secrets management. At the moment, it's an experimental one, but there will be a final one pretty soon. So here we have the credentials to, to do what? So the thing is, okay, let's say we want to do something in Exchange. Coming back to this example here with the Pleasant password server. So here I have what we call a target for Exchange in this case. And what it means is, okay, I configuring where do I want to connect to, what's the system in the background, and what's the credential. And this mapping is fixed to this target, which means later on, when I'm using this Exchange target, Scriptrunner knows what is the credential that I need to connect to Exchange. The same is true if I would do that, for example, let's go for Office 65 as a target. So here I would have a target that is able to connect to Office 65 with this credential. Here I could also configure what kind of endpoints I want to use and what kind of authentication I maybe already have implemented, like the certificate-based one for XOV2. And the same is true for Azure or for any kind of backend system. So you can create all kinds of targets for talking with PowerShell to these backend systems. Now, because we have this credential information in the configuration, there's no need to have this information in your scripts. So no credentials in your scripts. And because the target knows where to connect to, there is also no need to really have this logistic information about how to connect to your backend system. And that simplifies, of course, the whole way of using and writing PowerShell, because you can really concentrate on the business case, so to speak, and you don't have to worry about the logistics to the left, to the right, like credentials and stuff like that. And so we have the scripts, we have credentials, we have targets, and with this, we can create what we call actions, because the actions are bringing together all these bits and pieces, like the scripts, the credentials, targets, and other objects as well, to, for example, be able to add a channel to all my teams, which is a very simple example, but just to show you that I have this here, and if I'm running that, and I'm still in the admin context, so this is how it looks like. We see there are 3 parameters. We see the descriptions right here, and so this is how we, let's say, create this user interface. And so I would type in the name, general, whatever, 1, 2, 3, and click on OK, and then this script is executed. Now, if I'm going to look into this example here, we can see, for example, because the tenant ID is not necessary, I could just hide that from the input form. So then if I'm starting this again, I only would see 2 parameters, sorry, that are available now for the user to interact with this solution. And in other cases, this might be even more interesting if we think about creating a new Azure VM, for example. Again, we have here these parameters. We can decide what OS and what location and what size. And if we go into the edit mode, we can see that there are many more parameters available here. Like, okay, what's the resource group name? Do we want to have static or dynamic IP addresses and all that stuff? And you can predefine that, set this to hide, and then it's just only, again, the things that you want the users to be able to select and to work with. That's what's visible. For example, like the location and the VM size. So, and here we're using queries, because what we don't want is that there is an interface and an input form where somebody could type in, I don't know, standard D2 whatever, and by accident spinning up the VM that costs $1,000 a day or something. That's why we have these queries, and with these queries you can really manage what the users are able to select, which also means if there is a group of people that you have in Europe and in the US, maybe this list of available locations will be different. And instead of maintaining that in your script, you just make a copy of that action, and then you just have another selection of regions maybe in the US, and the other people are going to have the selection of regions in Europe. But you don't have to do this in your scripts. It's something you manage in Scriptrunner. And so you can really maintain that in a very easy way. And then once that's all tested, you say, okay, that's okay. Now I can start delegating that. And that's where help desk people might come into the picture. Maybe even end users might come into the picture, depending on your use cases. And so it might look like this. This is really where you can take an action and integrate that as an iframe into whatever kind of website. SharePoint website or whatever, it doesn't matter. It's really just an iframe. Or if it's a user, maybe in help desk that works with quite a number of actions, then maybe this person will be working with our portal. Because here you have access to all the delegated actions in a single place, and you might maybe create, again here, if you create an Azure VM, or maybe create a Teams report or an Active Directory report, because maybe that's delegated to this person. These are all the things that you can do here inside of that portal. And the number of actions that you see here really depends on, okay, what do you want to delegate to your users, right? So what are the jobs that they should be able to do in whatever backend system, which means everything that you can manage and work with based on PowerShell, you can integrate into Scriptrunner, and all the activities are ending up in this dashboard. So if I'm going into the dashboard, I can see what's actually happening right here. That okay, there was some action going on with creating a new team, and I can see which user actually created that team. And if it's like in this case, it was a user in help desk, user Gina right here, and so you can see in the report, okay, what was the actual action? Where did this script run against? Which backend system? Which credential? You can see the parameter values, the ones that had the input by the user, but also the default ones, and then you see the results and the technical information by what happens. So like if you would have run that natively on the PowerShell console, and that gives you really the full control about all these activities. And as I said, it's not just about the interactive way of using Scriptrunner in PowerShell, like in this case. It also could be, of course, the scheduled tasks, like creating a report that you want to do on a daily basis. And then you can say, okay, I want this Active Directory report being created maybe once a day, but only on Friday, or maybe I want to have this created every day at a particular time, or maybe there 2 times a day, whatever. So you can create all these scheduled actions, which is another quite interesting aspect, that you could kind of centralize all your decentralized Windows task scheduler things that are going on your servers, and maybe they work, maybe they don't work, and to bring them into a central place. That can help here as well. And then of course here you would activate an email notification to really get the info if something went wrong with that execution. And you can work with target collections. So let's say you have 200 servers where you want to give some housekeeping every Saturday. You don't have to select all of them in each action. You can just combine them into a collection and then say, okay, I want to have this action being executed on 200 machines in sequence or in parallel. So this is the aspect of having the scheduled approach. And the third one would be then really using connectors, using the REST API, where in this case, for example, I have a PITG monitoring system running, and I'm allowing the system to talk to Scriptrunner. It has to authenticate, because based on that, we are making sure that this machine is allowed to trigger whatever action this machine wants to trigger. And then also, of course, this activity becomes part of the dashboard, and you can monitor that. You can make drill downs in the dashboard. And from another perspective, of course, dashboards are also interesting if it comes down to okay, now we have started to automate with PowerShell and with Scriptrunner, and what's the benefit actually? And so what you can do is on each action, you can configure the time that you save compared to doing it manually, and based on that, we are calculating the time, and you can calculate then, of course, also the cost you saved, and that's something that you can export, and then that might be something that you want to kind of, bring send to your manager maybe once a week, so they know, okay, that's why we're using this automation stuff, because it saves us time and it saves us money. And that's what managers like, right? So this is just another, of course, important aspect of all that, using PowerShell, using Scriptrunner. All right, so that was a quick run through the solution, and I hope you could see that, you know, compared things like this to okay, doing things on the command line, which is nothing wrong with that, right? If you can do it and you're into it, great, awesome. But really, if you have created your scripts and maybe you have the skills to do all that stuff, using something like Scriptrunner would really also kind of really kind of bring you into the spotlight in the organization, because now instead of just it's you using PowerShell and doing the great stuff with it, now all of a sudden the whole organization could benefit from what you're doing, and that might not be a bad thing when we're thinking about career and stuff like that. All right, so with this, let me go back to my presentation and yeah, sum up what we saw. So so basically, when you look at using Scriptrunner together with PowerShell, it's number one, of course, we have all the great foundation with all the things that you can do with PowerShell, and the modules. And then if we put Scriptrunner on top, what happens really is that PowerShell becomes something that is not just something here for this guy on the left side in the admin world. It's really something that, depending on your use case, your whole organization could benefit from. Your help desk people, your end user, and more often than not, we see companies where the help desk people become the driving force of adding new use cases to Scriptrunner, because they are saying, couldn't you also delegate this task for VMware or for SharePoint to us? Because then we can serve our end user customers better and faster, and we don't have to bother you, IT pros, IT admin team, to do all that stuff for us. This is another, I think, very important aspect right here. And it's, again, it's based on this great technology, PowerShell, which is there, and it will be around in the future, and Microsoft is investing in it. And so that's really, I think, a good thing to, if you haven't done it yet, to really start looking into learning PowerShell. And so if you liked what you saw, you might want to have some hands-on experience yourself. You can, of course, download our solution, work with it 30 days. If you need more time, we can always extend the license. If you have additional use cases or specific questions regarding maybe your infrastructure, it would be great to have a session with you. And if you want, because I talked a little bit about this Teams stuff, if you are interested in to learn more about what you can do with PowerShell to manage Microsoft Teams, we're gonna have a webinar on this in June on the 23rd. So you might want to maybe join that as well. And I'm also going to copy in my contact information into the chat. So if there is anything else that you would like to know about PowerShell or Scriptrunner or both, or how we can support you on your automation journey, please get in touch with me on LinkedIn or on Twitter. I'm pretty active on Twitter, so maybe that's the best way to get in touch with me. And so, yeah, I'm just looking at the chat if there are any questions that came up here. Doesn't look like it. So if there are no additional questions, yeah, I say thank you for joining my session, Unlock the Power of PowerShell across your organization. I hope you could learn a little bit about how to use PowerShell and what really the potential is when it comes to using PowerShell in your organization. And again, if there's anything else you would like to ask me or get in touch with me, please use my contact information that I put just now into the chat. And yeah, have a great rest of CloudEight, and then great weekend. Okay, thank you.